Hello and welcome back to Southern Sweden Design Days studio. Our next segment is called Now or Never. As we all know, the climate crisis is something that affects all of us. But most of us live with this internal conflict between what we know and what we actually do. Because changing behavior is difficult. So our next segment is about a conversation surrounding this, about sustainability and the fear of finding out. So here to lead us in this discussion, I have designer Emma Olbers, and she is the creator behind the exhibition Now or Never that is shown at Former Design Center on this specific topic that she will tell you more about. I would also like to present Kimberly Nichols, professor in sustainability science. And joining us on link, we have Isabel McAllister, designer, stylist, writer, and lecturer. Take it away.
Hey, hey.
Hey, hey. Hi, Isabel.
Hi. How are you guys?
Just fine. Hi, everyone. I'm so glad to see that there are so many here. So my name is Emma Olbers, and I'm a furniture designer. And I'm actually just now having an exhibition at Form Design Center. And I hope, if you haven't been there, please go and see it. The name of the exhibition is Now or Never, and it's because that it is now or never. And we have actually 6.5 years left to have half our emission to 50%. So with me here today, I have Kimberly Nicholas and I have Isabel. So Kimberly, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your work?
Sure. Nice to be here with you all. I'm a professor at Lund University in climate and sustainability science. I'm also an author of the book Under the Sky We Make, How to Be Human in a Warming World. I write the newsletter We Can Fix It on Substack, which is about facing the climate crisis with facts, feelings, and action. And I spend a lot of time giving talks and working with audiences like this to take what we know from science out into the world where people can use it.
And Isabel, what's your background?
Well, my background is in design and interior design and working with things and media and communication. So, but I did the transition maybe 5 or 6 years ago. So now I call myself a system change activist. And that means that I actively try to change the system. And it's going great.
Excellent.
But I work as a sort of a middle ground between organization, companies, NGOs, civic society, and I try to find ways to navigate these strange times. I also write a newsletter called Chunks of Change on Substack, as Kim does, and I have Instagram, and I focus a lot about the norms and our inner transition. And I work with scientists and researchers to try to help them to communicate as well.
Yeah, and you've also written this book.
Yes,
that I have here.
Sort of perfectly flawed in English.
Yeah, so my first question was, does it really happen enough? And you kind of answer it, but Kimberly, what do you think?
No, we are not doing enough as a world, as a country. Many of us could be doing more to tackle the root causes of the climate crisis and to actually reduce emissions. We know, for example, that right now Sweden's climate policy is going in the wrong direction, actually increasing emissions when, as you said, we need to be cutting them in half in the next very few years. We're going to run out of our current carbon budget to keep the temperature below 1.5 degrees of warming in 73 months at the current emissions rate. So my passport will be valid longer than our carbon budget if we don't make major changes.
It's hard to even understand when you say the passport compared to the passport. And so, Kimberly, how much are we supposed to lower per person in Sweden and in general globally?
So to be on track to stop and stabilize the climate, I mean, basically what the science tells us is 5 things which are almost a haiku. It's warming, it's us, we're sure, it's bad, we can fix it. So to fix it, we have to actually completely stop adding carbon and greenhouse gases to the atmosphere. And that means we need to make a really fast, fair transition away from fossil fuels, which are the main source of climate pollution. So we need to do that quickly. And in countries like Sweden, where historically we've emitted a lot and we have lifestyles that emit a lot, we need to go first and faster. So right now, Sweden, we're around approximately 8 tons per person per year. That's our carbon footprint on average. Of course, if we're higher than that, we have even more responsibility to reduce faster. But we should be aiming for something like 2 tons per person per year by 2030, which, as you said, is about 6.5 years away. So it's a big change.
And for some of us that earn like the higher upper, like 10% of the world income, that is a lot of the Swedish people. It's more like we need to lower it. I think you said it, Isabel, like 87, Oxfam said.
Yeah, so this gets to the climate crisis is unfair in many ways. And one of those ways is that there's actually a relatively small group of people in history and around the world who have more responsibility and have emitted more than others. So actually, 90% of people on Earth do not need to make lifestyle changes in order for us to stabilize the climate. But many of us in this room, most people in Sweden, in my home country of the US, and in North America and Europe, historically high emitting countries, we are the ones who do need to reduce our personal emissions. And that's because there's so much over the sustainable limit that we need both system changes and reduced overconsumption to actually make the numbers work.
Yeah. And I think it's good with numbers also. So the 10% that is earning most money, how much money is that for a Swedish person per month? Do you know? Or Isabel, no. It's like
it's more if you earn more than 27,500, I think, in
per
general
month.
and per month, and the median wage is 33,200. Then you have to lower your emission with 87%. So it's easy to talk about the rich all the time, but who are the rich?
We are the rich. Everyone who
we are
earns,
the rich. Yeah.
if you earn more than 27,000 a month.
Yeah, and then of course we have the super rich, and they emit even more. But I think it's necessary to like put the eyes on ourselves and see what we are part of. And a lot of people say like, okay, but look at China or whatever, and we're such a small country, and yeah, we are like 0.13% of the world's population, but we use 3% of the world's resources. So yeah, that says a lot.
So back to you, Kimberly. Why do you think this green transition takes such a long time?
Well, I think there's many reasons. One really important reason is that there's been an organized disinformation campaign by the fossil fuel industry, and there's a lot of research showing this. For example, Naomi Oreskes from Harvard and many of her colleagues have really clearly documented that there's been an active effort to slow down the transition. So, I mean, we used to think that, oh, climate policy or ambitious climate action is unpopular, it's really tough. There are things about it that can be challenging, but we also have to acknowledge there's been a lot of active effort to prevent the transition from happening by the vested interests that benefit from the current system as it is. So I think that's one really important reason.
Yeah, and to fit in there, I think it's also what I think is that Exxon and all big companies, the Swedish forest industry, they have a lot of money, and the future doesn't have any money. Or any supporter in money, and that's a totally different if you think PR time. And Isabel, what do you think? Why does it take such a long time?
Yeah, but of course it's the money and the lobbyism behind it. But I also think, I mean, we have built this machinery of industrial producing more and more, and we got used to this system, but we forget that it's us that build the system. So it's hard to do right in the wrong system, kind of. And so I think we need to unlearn the system and look at the systems around us and try to see, okay, where did it go wrong? Because a lot of things we did by just like okay, nice to have more things. Okay, we do them and we produce more and more. And then suddenly we're like, oh, this isn't working. So now I think we have to like look at the systems and try to figure out, okay, how can we change them? So I think it's partly money, but it's also like, just we're just getting along with our lives, and we didn't realize how wrong it went.
Yeah,
somehow.
And I guess kind of for a designer or like me that are shaping things that people want to buy, it's that goal. What is your main goal in life that we need to kind of switch also? You want to have another. It's not like the most important thing is not to have a lot of stuff. It's more to have good stuff, or do a few good things. And I know in both in your podcast, but also in your newsletter, you wrote about a fear of finding out. Could you explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so FOFO, it's a take on FOMO, I guess, here of missing out. But it started as a medical term. You know, maybe you know something is wrong with your body, but you don't go to the doctor, because if you go to the doctor, then you have to deal with it, right? So I think you can also apply this to the current society we're in somehow. So I think a lot of people know there's something wrong, but as long as you continue to shop and go to your work and go on this travel, the flying and whatever, you don't have to think about it. But it's the same as with a disease. If you put it aside, it's going to hit you harder later. And it's the same thing with the climate crisis. If you translate it a little bit to Swedish, I would say it's classic Swedish strutsa. Put your head in the sand, kind of, right? And I think I'm seeing this a lot with talented, high educated and smart people, like entrepreneurs, influencers, artists, politicians even, or business leaders. And in one way they brag or take pride in their knowledge and their education, but in this case it's like it doesn't exist. And I think we really need to get these people to engage with their brains and their ideas. And I also lastly see this a lot in journalists and in takes. It's like people talk about what's happening, but they don't engage. So we have like one large podcaster and a columnist, and he wrote like, I want to scream at the climate minister. And then the next day he goes on with his life, and he continues to make about flying or shopping or whatever. So it's like he distanced himself from the society and what's happening. And that this thing happens a lot, I think.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I totally have the same feeling, and that's one of the things why I wanted to do that exhibition, because it's such a short time, and I wanted to. That's what I think. The place that I can do something is, of course, in the furniture industry. So I wanted to.
Can you? Sorry, I wanted you to tell a little bit more about the exhibition.
About the
exhibition.
Yeah, so I have been like trying to understand much more what is our emission in the furniture industry, and how can I lower the emissions, and so I'm mostly working with the climate and greenhouse gases. Not because it's the only important thing, because biodiversity and a lot of the other ones is as important. But it's countable, and it has been for a very long time. And so if you talk about greenhouse gases, the furniture compared to cars or clothing are emitting most when you produce them. So the production phase is really important, and during the production phase it's the material that takes most of the emissions or the greenhouse gases, and it could be, if you generalize, it could be like 50 to 80%. I actually just heard that electric car is 62% is the materials on an electric car. Swedish electric car. And so that's why I put a lot of time into materials, and this exhibition is about materials, and every material is shown in 1 kilo of greenhouse gases. So it makes it's really clear when you can see how much you really get for 1 kilo of emissions. So one piece of leather is very small, and one piece of woven bamboo is very large. So it's very clear, you can really touch and feel, and everyone that goes in the exhibition also touches. Yeah. So
I think it's a great example of making the emissions more concrete. I mean, so you can, feel them in a way, receive them in front of your eyes. Otherwise, you just talk about numbers, right? So
yeah, and I think it's a great way of translating numbers into something you can touch.
Tangible, yeah.
Yeah. So I had a few more questions. But my next question to you, Kimberly, is that in your book, Under the Sky We Make It, that I'm actually almost finishing. I just have...
There's no quiz, I told you.
Yeah, but it's a very good book. You actually say that facts doesn't really matter when you want to convince a person. What do you think would convince people to do the change, to start the change?
So in my work, I'm trying to link facts, feelings, and action.
Yeah.
Because we know that facts, of course, do matter. As a scientist, I believe that, and research also shows that most people, even though we see these worrying trends of, for example, fake news and polarization, it's still the case that scientists are actually the most trusted members of society, much more so, about twice as much as journalists and 4 times more than politicians. So people really do care about the facts. They want to get the facts right. They want experts involved in policy debates and decisions. So I think that is important. And we know that facts don't speak for themselves, and facts don't automatically translate into action. And we need this bridge of feelings that links facts and action. That's where this, what I call the 5 stages of radical climate acceptance comes in, and it links to what, Isabel, you were saying about FOFO. So those stages are ignorance, avoidance, doom, all the feels, and purpose. And we kind of have to go through those stages where at first we don't know about the climate crisis, it's not in our DNA, we have to learn about it somewhere. But then all of us, I think, go through this second phase, and I was in it for a long time, of avoiding these uncomfortable truths of, maybe the change required will be too big. So, for example, I'm a former frequent flyer, and I knew that was the biggest part of my carbon footprint, but I just couldn't really face what a change might mean there. And it kind of had to get to a point where I was confronted with being at a conference of climate scientists where I had flown and my friend had taken the train about the same distance. And we had this conversation, and I felt like I am like a doctor puffing on a cigarette and telling my patients to quit smoking. I just can't tolerate this cognitive dissonance anymore. So through that process, and through encouragement from a friend, and through role modeling by a friend, which we know is really important to change behavior, I had the support, and I was able to go through and kind of confront all these uncomfortable feelings and realize, okay, I actually have opportunities to better align my actions with my values. In doing that, you can be moving in the direction of purpose, which feels really good, is how you can contribute to making a positive change. And actually life can be better. It can be more meaningful, it can be more fun. I ended up taking a 15-hour train ride to Paris with my future husband for our 4th date, and that is a very good test of relationship suitability, so I could recommend it.
But when you're standing in a discussion with a close friend and they don't understand, what feelings do you want to come up with, or what story do you think is the most convincing, or most the easiest way to get them to start transform?
I think what works the best is to listen to people.
Yeah.
To genuinely be curious. If you're trying to get someone else to change, first of all, it's important to realize the message and the messenger are really important. So, I mean, none of us is the perfect messenger for every situation. We all have an audience where we're going to have more trust, more authority, more weight, more authenticity. So within that group, we can be most effective by being honest and authentic. And I think about sharing our own experience can be really powerful, and your own concerns. And I was just talking with a student who gave herself the challenge of talking about flying and climate for 30 days. Every day with a different person. I thought, wow, that is really hard, actually. I've never done that. I'm not sure I could do that. And she said what worked is to not bombard people with facts and numbers and statistics, but to say, I'm really worried, or I'm really scared for the future. I don't know what this will be, to start with her own experience, because then people can connect to that. And if they know why you care, they might care what you know.
Yeah, okay. That's a great tip. And Isabel, what do you think most people?
Well, I think it's the same. I mean, to talk about your own flaws and ideas and thoughts and how we're all struggling. And I also think it's important. I mean, Kim, you were talking about all these stages, but these stages come and goes. I mean, we can have like a really nice time and still feel sad about the climate or devastated or whatever. So I think all these things comes in strides. So I try to talk a lot about like how we're feeling right now after the pandemic with the inflation and then the climate crisis as well. So we kind of can meet each other there. And then sometimes I think it's easier to talk to someone who's not my closest friend, because that could be a little affected. Or I can ask my closest friends, like, so how do you talk about this at work? Because then I don't talk about her or him.
Yeah,
so
right.
I can put it a little bit further off. But on the other hand, it's another thing who's kind of annoying me at the moment is like, when did we become a society when we have to like be nice to everyone to think about the environment and the planet and the future of our kids? It's a little bit too much of a, oh, that was so good of you. You didn't buy 15 t-shirts last week. It's like, it's some sort of grown-up responsibility, I think. So it's also this line between dalta, I don't know how you say that in English, but like to pamper someone and to a pep talk. So I'm a little bit in between there now, because it's like we don't have the time. So I'm a little bit like, grow up, do something, and then I will help you and ask for help and try to, it can't only come from my side of the party, Yeah, sorry, I got a bit.
We feel you.
We're with you. And you have asked me many times, Isabel, that what is my best convincing tips. And I have this New Year's dinner that we have had actually since, I think it's 2015. For my... I'm almost said my normal friends, my friends that have different, they work in different fields, and they have different type of incomes, but all of them are in the 10%, some of them actually in the 1%. And so we started 2015 and do the Swedish Environmental Institute's klimatkontot, the climate
calculator.
Yeah.
Climate calculator, yeah.
Yeah. So it's really good, klimatkontot.se. So we do that every year, and we started a long time ago when a lot of people had a lot then. Some had like 25, 30 tons per year. And the first year I just said, because everyone had like different ideas on, what is that in English? You want to nyårslöften?
New Year's resolution.
Resolutions, and if we wanted to be better in the job or with the family and so on. And then I said one year, oh, can't we do this climate counting? And everyone was just, oh, yes, that's fun. So we did that, and we said we wanted to lower it with 20%. And it was pretty easy to lower to 50%.
Wow.
And then it's harder after that. But the fun thing is that all the ones that have been on this dinner since 2015, all of them have electric cars. They're almost not flying sometimes, and they've also talked at their work, start changing. So, and I have not had any like lecture about sustainability or climate. We have just done the counting, and it's also a game. So you win or you don't win. And the one that was the loser one this year got Greta's book.
Oh, I love that so much. And we know from research that doing things together really works. And for example, you're much more likely to get solar panels on your roof if your neighbors have them. So having this kind of accountability and making it fun and a game is such a good idea.
Yeah.
And then people, I mean, to lower your own footprint, as we've been discussing, is really important if we're in this high emitting group. But we have 5 climate superpowers. So consumption is one, but also how we are as role models, how we influence others, like this party, how we are as citizens engaging politically, professionals and in organizations with our work time, and as investors with our time and money. So all of those are ways that we can both lower our own emissions and help change the system and link our personal action to system change to make bigger changes.
Yeah. Good.
So once you get that group, although they've done as much as they can personally with their footprint, then encourage them onto the other superpowers. Like if they've done the first 50%, now it's time to focus on investing and role modeling and at work and as citizens.
Yeah, and what I saw also was just that competition was helping.
Yeah.
Which is so strange, I thought.
So I think it's different from different groups, right? I mean, when you talk about all these problems, it becomes so abstract. And when you take it down to the climate calculator, it becomes like, okay, this is a list that I can do somehow. And you don't have to think about the bigger picture. So I think it's such a vast problem, so we need like lots of different solutions for different kind of people. And I also think we need to think about that an individual is also part of the system, like Kim said, but like an individual is also a politician, or an individual is also a CEO of a company. And we are all role models. It doesn't matter if we have 30,000 followers on Instagram or 3 of them, because we're all gonna change people around us.
Yeah, especially all of us that are the 10% of the higher income. We are really role models, and it really matters what we do. So we are kind of need to sum up this. What is your best tips on the solution or recommendations to lower the emissions?
Well, one thing I want to say for the designers here in the audience is I think it's really good to think about this avoid, shift, improve framework. To start with actually thinking of how can you reduce the demand for stuff and lower consumption to a sustainable level. Often we start with efficiency, but that should be the last step. We need to have actually reduced overconsumption, so the amount of consumption is sustainable, and then improve what we're consuming. So in practical terms, that means how can you design something that will last hopefully forever or for a lifetime or many decades? Because, for example, for clothing, there was an SLU study showing the only way to reduce emissions by 50% or more for clothing is to make it last longer. It only helped about 10% to use, for example, recycled materials or even a circular economy with like trading clothing. You really have to make stuff that lasts longer to make a big dent in emissions.
Good. And Isabel?
Well, I have another take of that, because I think a lot of things that we own already lasts a long time. So it has a lot to do about norms and how we use them. So I think as a designer, we also have to think about what can we design, because we are going into futures. I'm saying multiple futures because we don't know, it's going to be different futures. So how can we use our design thinking and our creativity to design new types of worlds? And this can be really abstract, but things in a new way. We don't need designers to design new things. We need them to design new ways of using them, or think about it, or changing the norms. So I think, we need to do long-lasting stuff, but we have a lot of them. Like British Fashion Council just came out and said we have clothes to last us for 6 generations. So we don't really need new stuff. We need återbrukare, like reusers. Every school should have a reuse program. I don't know why they don't have it, and change the norms as well as the things. So I think that's probably it. See it as a creativity problem. It's like, okay, so how can I change something else, and do it together with other people? Reach out to other design disciplinaries or different companies and find like-minded people and try to make change that way.
Yeah, and I also think that designers are hopefully very creative, and then I think we do have a very strong responsibility to both paint this picture of the future and
Yes.
change the system to so the new way of living and new way of consuming is more trendy and popular.
Yes.
And I have one more question if we have time. So we are supposed to lower our emission with 50% or 70%. So if I'm a furniture producer, I produce 100% of my business model is producing furnitures, but I will change that to 50% is producing furnitures. What would you think I could do with the other 50%?
Ooh. I mean, in general, I think what can work the best is if we find what we're good at, what we think is fun, and what the world needs. So I don't know you well enough to tell you exactly what you should do, but I think, I mean, from a personal level, if you fly, that's your biggest source of emissions.
Yeah.
Cut that as much as you can. If you drive, that's the most common source of emissions. Cut that as much as you can. I mean, flight and car free is the best, but if that seems impossible where you are now, do what you can to cut those first.
Yeah.
Those are the two biggest sources of personal emissions. Eating a plant-based diet then is the third highest impact. So that's on the personal side. Then within your professional world, I mean, maybe it's more about not just what you do as a designer, but building the network and getting, for example, the industry to, for example, follow science-based targets. That's a way that companies can say, we're doing our fair share of the Paris Agreement, for example, and change the supply chain and change broader drivers in the industry that will bring more people along with you.
Yeah. And Isabel, do you...
Well, I think what you're doing, like these kind of talks, the exhibition, to show people, to spread the knowledge that you have. So we can't sit on our knowledge anymore. We have to spread everything we know to kind of change the idea. And I think it's a good way that you say that, like, minimize the way you are designing new stuff. But I really see a market in the reuse section. Like, how can we make new things, not new for the planet, but with the old things that you made already? Can you kind of help people to see how they can change it so it feels new, but it's not new and doesn't take any impact on the planet? Or how to design or do interiors with old stuff. We need much more, more reuse than recycling.
Yeah, and that's totally what I totally agree with you. Like 50%, so if you're a designer, 50% or producer need to be recycled products and in any way, or rentable products, something else than new.
And reuse. So we don't have to, because I think we have a kind of a sickness in Sweden with designing new things. That everything, even the soap next to in your kitchen has to be designed. And it's like, so we have a problem with, I'm seeing that a lot with designers when I come in and they're like, so we're reusing this and we're bringing this material back in. But I mean, if you reuse a material, you gain like 15% of the imprint. It's not that much. But if we reuse it, I mean, if you recycle it, because it takes a lot of process.
Yeah.
I mean, it's also, but reuse it. What can we do with the things that is already here? I think that's super important. And it's really a gap in the market. So I think if you start finding your way there, it's going to be a good one.
Yeah, really. And with that, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for being here.
Thank you that I could be on link.
Bye, Isabel.
Nice to see you guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Emma. Thank you so much, Kimberly, Isabel online. So this was the end of this segment. Join us again at 1:15, where there will be an awards ceremony.
Tack så
Until
mycket.
then, thank you.
Thank you. Nu är det någon, eller?
Straight away.